My dad was a giver, and he was the type to never say no. He would go above and beyond for anybody and everybody. I don't think she quite understood what she was taking away.
The cartilage in his neck was crushed. In order for that to happen, there had to be immense force used.
So, what seemed to be an attraction at first turned into an obsession.
I think she wanted to claim all the property, all the cars, the jewelry, the clothes. She wanted to have it all to herself without him in the picture.
This was a cold-blooded killer that wanted revenge.
On November 21st, 2007, police in Nassau County, New York, receive a frantic 911 call from a woman named Kelly Forbes.
Nassau Police Emergency Operator 421.
Hello.
Yes. Okay, you're gonna have to stop crying, sweetheart, so I can understand you. What's the problem?
Kelly says her husband, 50-year-old Michael Forbes, is unconscious on their bedroom floor.
Is he breathing?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, stop crying, okay?
Don't go to the bed.
Okay, all right, we're gonna get somebody over there. Okay?
When paramedics arrive, they find Kelly and her young daughter waiting at the top of the stairs.
Kelly's hysterical. She's crying. She can't believe what just happened.
She's with her daughter and can barely form a sentence. The only thing she can do is point in the direction of the bedroom. But when they find Michael, he's unconscious, but still has a pulse. So they immediately begin CPR on him in an attempt to revive him and stabilize him.
But as they work to save Michael's life, the first responders realize they've been to this house and treated this patient before.
Just about a month prior, Michael Forbes had suffered a heart attack.
This was the very house that they had just been at. Police are wondering, is this what happened again? Did Michael sustain yet another heart attack?
Michael Aaron Forbes was born in 1957 in Brooklyn, New York. His parents raised him and his brother to appreciate the value of hard work.
From a young age, everyone around him felt he was very gregarious and just very charming. He had a paper route as a young child. All of the neighborhood people always said how business-minded he was at such a young age.
Michael and his brother, they were entrepreneurs at heart.
That work ethic served Michael well throughout his teens. But his ambitious nature eventually led him down a dangerous path.
In his 20s, Michael became enamored by the street life, unfortunately.
The 70s were wild in New York. Michael actually got into the drug game. Because Michael was that business-minded person, he not only sold drugs, he was the drug kingpin. That began a string of run-ins with the law.
He ended up spending a few years in jail.
Michael's time in prison convinced him to turn his life around. So, when he was released in the late 1980s, he found a new profession. He also found love.
My dad became a barber while he was in jail and got his master barber license. So my dad was working at a barbershop and started cutting my brother's hair. And that's where my parents, I guess their love story began.
I would see him every week, and we both liked the movies, so Michael would say, "You want to go to the movies?" And I'd say, "Sure, let's go." And, you know, we always had fun. He was a fun guy.
It was Nadine who made him really change his mind about who he wanted to be. He wanted to be a good man, but now he wanted to be a husband too. He wanted that happy life, that happy family.
In 1993, Michael achieved those goals with the birth of his daughter, Michelle.
My parents got married when my mom was 8 months pregnant with me. Instead of having a big wedding, they bought their first house.
That entrepreneurial spirit, she brought it back out in him. And she questioned him that, you know, why are you working for someone else? You're a great barber, you're business-minded. You should open your own shop.
I had an idea to name the barbershop Heads Up Barbershop. And he said, you know what, that's a great idea. And so he named it that, you know, and we went around the city, all over New York, and collected all these antique barber chairs.
Michael, he became the man that he'd always dreamed of being.
From that barbershop, he ended up investing in real estate and restaurants and just expanding his business in a huge way and becoming very wealthy.
For 10 years, his business thrived. But the marriage ultimately fell apart.
You know, he told me, oh, I had work to do in the barbershop. I had to, you know, mop the floors. But I knew something was up. You know, I ended up putting one and one together, and we were divorced.
My parents got divorced when I was 10. It went back and forth for court for a while. Like, you love your mother, you love your father. And it's very hard, but I would still see my dad every weekend.
As a wealthy bachelor in New York, it didn't take long for Michael to begin sliding back into some of his old habits.
With Michael's success, a little bit of the past Michael came back. The money, the fast cars. He was starting to venture back into the fast life once again, and the fast life came with women.
Within 2 years, however, life in the fast lane had taken a toll on Michael's health.
In early 2005, Michael had to have a stress test. He was having some health issues and had to see a doctor immediately.
His nurse was an attractive young woman from Trinidad named Kelly.
Here's Kelly soothing him through it and making him feel comfortable. So after all of that, he was just wowed by her.
She had the accent, you know, just nice to look at. And he wanted to have her around, you know, made him feel good, made him feel young again.
Kelly was more focused on work than on romance. She'd recently moved to the United States with her 5-year-old daughter, but Michael was persistent.
He would send flowers to her job, a lot of flowers, just bouquets, in an attempt to woo her, and it worked.
In September 2006, Kelly and Michael end up going on a date. And Michael, being Michael, pulls out all of the stops to pursue and woo Kelly.
Within 3 weeks, Michael had proposed marriage to Kelly. But Kelly was smart. She told Michael things were going way too fast. She wanted to slow it down, so she actually said no to the proposal. But Michael, being Michael, he turned it up a notch yet again.
In September 2007, Kelly finally said yes.
Because Michael had basically eloped for his first wedding with Nadine, he spared no expense when he married Kelly. This was the woman that he planned to spend the rest of his life with. He wanted her happy.
Michael and Kelly wed in a lavish Trinidadian wedding with food and drums amongst all of their close family and friends. Michael's wedding gift to Kelly was a $1 million waterfront mansion in an affluent neighborhood in Nassau County, New York.
It seemed like a fairy tale for both of them. But it would end in tragedy. Now, Michael is being taken to the hospital for the second time in 2 months. And when police speak to Kelly, it quickly becomes clear this wasn't another heart attack.
They want to know what happened. What happened to Michael? Why is he unconscious? Can she fill in the blanks? And it was at that moment that Kelly dropped the bombshell.
Kelly's revelation was that it was her fault.
As paramedics rush 50-year-old Michael Forbes to the hospital, Nassau County Police talk to his new bride, Kelly Forbes, to find out what happened.
Kelly is emotional and struggling to process everything that's happening and just trying to communicate effectively. And all she can say is that she did this to Michael.
Kelly says it all began with a disagreement that spiraled out of control.
Kelly tells police that her and Michael had argued the night before about the fact that they had only been married a short while, and he felt that she was devoting way too much time to her daughter and her family.
Kelly got upset and didn't want to argue in front of her daughter, and she told Michael, hey, look, we'll finish this later, just not in front of my daughter. Let's wait until she goes to bed. And Michael agreed.
Kelly says her 7-year-old daughter asked her to stay in her bedroom until she fell asleep. But Kelly accidentally fell asleep alongside her. When she got up several hours later, Michael was still waiting for her.
When Kelly went into the room, Michael was upset.
Michael is in a rage, screaming about how she's not a good wife, she's neglecting her wifely duties, and she suggests that she just leave if the relationship is not working for him. And he storms off in a rage.
Kelly says she eventually managed to get back to sleep, but the argument wasn't over yet. Around 7:30 a.m., she claims she woke up to someone standing over her. Before she could react, she was attacked.
Kelly says she was losing air quickly, and it felt like someone was strangling her.
Kelly says she realized that someone was Michael, and he was choking her with an extension cord.
Kelly's gasping for air and losing consciousness, and all she could think about is what will happen to her daughter if her husband kills her. So she kicks him in the groin and takes control of the situation, still with the extension cord around her neck, and somehow manages to get it around Michael's neck.
Kelly says this was a fight to the bitter end. They each were strangling one another, and Kelly knew whoever let go first was the one that was gonna die. Kelly continued to strangle Michael until he slumped onto the floor.
Kelly says it took her a few minutes to recover from the struggle. And when she realized Michael wasn't breathing, she panicked.
Kelly tells police that her friend was the closest one to their home, so she called him first. Her husband lay on the ground, unconscious. She strangled him. She was in shock, if you will. He immediately told her to call 911, and that's what Kelly did.
Kelly seems traumatized by the experience, but according to her, it's not the first time something like this has happened.
She said Michael was not only physically abusive, but was mentally and emotionally abusive to Kelly as well, and very controlling. Part of that control was Michael moving Kelly all the way to Long Island from Brooklyn, away from all of her friends, family, and work, forcing her to have to commute with no vehicle, with the intent that she would eventually leave her job and become a stay-at-home wife. When Michael asked that Kelly quit her job, she said no. She just was not the type to fully depend on a man. Her solution was to move back in with her family in Brooklyn.
Kelly says Michael tried to mend the relationship after he suffered his heart attack in mid-October. He bought her a car and promised her things would change, but they didn't.
Kelly says when she moves back in, the abuse not only continues, but it gets worse as Michael becomes more violent, hitting her, slapping her around, dragging her around.
Kelly tells police that after each violent episode, he showered her with gifts and told her how much he loved her and that it would never happen again. And Kelly believed him, so she stayed.
Kelly says she wishes now that she'd never come back in the first place. It's a terrifying story of domestic abuse.
The investigators checked police reports for signs of abuse, for anything that Kelly had possibly reported against Michael, any calls, anything at all, but there was nothing. There was no proof.
Police hope for an opportunity to hear Michael's side of the story. But within hours, that hope disappears.
Michael was rushed to the hospital where they administered CPR. Every life-saving technique they could do, that's exactly what they did. But Michael, he didn't make it. Michael was pronounced dead at the hospital.
There is no doubt that Kelly strangled Michael to death. The question left is, was it an act of self-defense or was it murder?
"29-year-old Kelly Forbes has confessed to strangling her husband of 2 months, Michael Forbes. According to her, she did it to stop him from killing her. But detectives aren't convinced.
Listening to Kelly, police had a lot of red flags pop up. Alarm bells went off because this wasn't a typical domestic violence case. She didn't exhibit any signs of the typical abuse that they saw on a day-to-day basis. There were a couple of wounds on her hands, but nothing significant to the point where they believed that Michael Forbes had tried to kill her.
Kelly's only injuries was a thumbprint bruise on her wrist, a scratch on her arm, and a scratch on the back of her neck. A woman of Kelly's size fighting a man as large as Michael, you would think that she would have more injuries on her than what she had.
If Kelly truly was strangled, where was the proof? Where were the ligature marks around her neck that surely an electrical cord would leave?
The crime scene itself doesn't show signs of much of a struggle either.
You would think a fight like this in the home, you would see more tables broken, more lamps broken, maybe sofas turned over, but there was none.
They surveyed the house. It wasn't messy. There was nothing knocked over. It didn't look like a house of a domestic violence dispute had just happened.
Investigators are also suspicious of the fact that Kelly's 7-year-old daughter slept through it all.
Kelly says that she didn't scream during the dispute because she didn't want to wake up her daughter. She didn't want her daughter to be frightened and see her and Michael fighting. As a mom, I understand that. But her daughter, she didn't hear anything. For police, that seemed a bit odd.
Kelly says that she had to fight for her life, so it's very difficult to believe that there was no noise during the altercation.
There's also a gap in Kelly's timeline.
Kelly claims that she strangled Michael at 7:30 a.m., but she didn't call the police until 8:48 a.m.
She might still be in shock from the morning's events and misremembering the timeline. But Michael's autopsy raises even more questions.
The coroner reports that Michael did die of strangulation, that the cartilage in his neck was crushed. In order for that to happen, there had to be immense force used. And it had to have lasted a minimum of 10 seconds. Police wondered, with Kelly being such a petite woman, could she exert that amount of force?
How is it that someone who is 5'5", 130 pounds, can overpower a man who's 6'1", 250 pounds. One of the possibilities is that due to the heart attack that Michael had suffered a month before, the medication he was taking was making him weak and very lethargic, which would make this the perfect time to strike.
A toxicology report also finds traces of a prescription sleep aid in Michael's bloodstream, making it even harder to believe he could have engaged in a violent struggle. To detectives, it's becoming increasingly clear that none of this happened the way Kelly claims. So they decide to arrest her.
Police take her into custody, charging her with second-degree murder.
You have to picture the bottom of the Nassau County Jail. The jail is in the basement, and it's dark. It's almost like a bad movie where you see everyone behind the bars just pacing back and forth, waiting for their case to be called. Kelly, she was crying, she was upset.
But Kelly continues to insist she's innocent. Knowing prosecutors will need more evidence to prove otherwise, Kelly's attorney immediately files for an arraignment hearing, leaving little time for the state to make its case.
In New York, you have some constitutional and statutory protections when you're being accused of a crime. At the time, and this was 12 years ago now, the prosecutor had to bring your case to a grand jury within 6 days.
The clock is ticking. Police have 6 days to gather enough evidence to indict Kelly or she goes free.
Nassau County Police believe Kelly Forbes murdered her husband, Michael Forbes. But they're running out of time to prove it. With only a few days left until the case goes before a grand jury, detectives interview Michael's friends and family, hoping they can shed more light on their relationship. According to them, Kelly's claims of domestic violence are completely fabricated.
I was married to Michael for 12 years. He was not controlling. He was not abusive.
It was actually Michael's family who tell police that Kelly is the one who changed after they got married. When they got back to the $1 million waterfront home, Kelly left immediately and went to Brooklyn.
Michael's parents would tell me that, Kelly wouldn't come home for hours and that, they wondered where she was all day.
Kelly always told Michael she was with her family. Just having come from Trinidad, she wanted to spend as much time with them as she could. But over time, Michael didn't believe her. Michael figured something was going on.
Michael's friends say he became convinced Kelly was cheating on him with other men.
These speculations of infidelity ensued many arguments between Michael and Kelly, which ultimately led her to pack her bags and go back to Brooklyn and move in with her family.
Michael was heartbroken. And that actual feeling of being heartbroken is what his family thinks caused his heart attack.
When Michael collapsed, Kelly wasn't even home. She was in Brooklyn, as usual. So he had to call his mother for help.
Michael's mother called me and she was crying. She said, Michael had a heart attack, Nadine. Do you think you can make it to New York?
He was admitted to the hospital and he was surrounded by his family. But it took Kelly a very long time to come and see her husband.
My dad's like, well, Michelle, this is Kelly. Kelly, this is Michelle. He introduced us, but she was on the phone the whole time.
She left a short while after, which made Michael's family very upset.
I remember my grandparents asking my dad, where's she going? Is she coming back? Like, just to make sure somebody was always going to be by his side, at least spend the night. We were up there for hours, and yeah, she left and never came back that day.
Michael's loved ones say after he was released from the hospital, he tried to win Kelly back. He bought her a brand new Mercedes so she could easily split her time between her family in Brooklyn and their home in Long Island.
Michael needed help. He had just had a heart attack. He needed his wife to take care of him. And he wanted his wife home where they lived, at the very house that he bought for her for the wedding. But Kelly was still not there.
Her conduct led Michael to believe she had an ulterior motive for agreeing to give their marriage another shot.
Before his death, Michael was sure that Kelly was just using him for his money.
After having grown up from poor beginnings, Kelly saw Michael as her meal ticket. This was a man that was 20 years her senior, wealthy, and he had a lot of health issues.
Personally, I think Kelly murdered Michael because she wanted everything to herself. All the property, all the cars, you know, the jewelry, the clothes. She wanted to have it all to herself without him in the picture.
Seeking evidence of Kelly's infidelity, detectives tracked down the man she called immediately after strangling Michael, her friend, Jeremy.
When police questioned Jeremy, they discovered that he's not just a friend. They've actually been sleeping together.
He came right out and told them, Kelly and I are actually together. We've been intimate for a long time. Jeremy tells investigators that he actually met Kelly online. And Jeremy actually even admitted that he knew about Michael, but it didn't deter their relationship.
Kelly having her side affair going on showed that she didn't love Michael at all, and it was all about the money. She had chances to leave anytime. She could leave anytime.
When detectives asked Jeremy about Kelly's claims of domestic violence, he says he doesn't know anything about it.
Jeremy tells police that he's never seen any signs of abuse from Michael. Jeremy constantly saw Kelly naked. He never saw any marks, bruises, cuts.
Jeremy turns over his phone as evidence, and the first message from Kelly provides a telling clue.
Jeremy shows police text messages between Kelly and him. And the text message says, "I did it."
Jeremy says when Kelly told him what happened, he immediately told her to call an ambulance.
And Jeremy was the one that asked, hey, is he breathing? Does he have a pulse? Call 911. It was a common sense thing, and Jeremy couldn't understand and even said as much. Why are you calling me? Hang up. Call 911.
But the timestamp on Kelly's messages confirms an earlier suspicion.
Kelly claims that Michael attacked her at 7:30 a.m. But Kelly didn't call 911 until 8:48 a.m. Well over 30 minutes after she hung up with Jeremy.
The bottom line is, why did it take Kelly over an hour to call police after she killed her husband?
It's been 6 days since Kelly Forbes strangled her husband, Michael Forbes, to death. And the date for her grand jury hearing has arrived. Prosecutors believe new evidence has given them what they need to convince a jury it wasn't a case of self-defense.
Prosecutors try to prove that Kelly was a cold-blooded killer that wanted revenge for Michael trying to control her life.
Prosecutors argue Kelly thought she stood to inherit Michael's property and savings, and say her minor injuries and and the fact that she waited an hour to call 911 speaks volumes.
Investigators have a theory that the reason why Kelly took so long to call 911 was that she wanted to make sure Michael Forbes was actually dead.
I think she was working on her alibi. I think she was trying to plan it out, her excuses. I think that she didn't like being married anymore, and that was her way out. And get paid at the same time. The house, the cars, the money.
But will it be enough for the jury to indict her?
When the prosecutors present their case to the grand jury, they actually ruled that there's not enough evidence to charge Kelly with murder. Kelly is released a free woman. She goes home, she resumes her normal life.
However, prosecutors aren't ready to admit defeat.
Rather than allow the grand jury to vote to dismiss, the prosecutor told the grand jury, hold on a second. And they left and they came back and presented additional evidence in a lesser charge, and that's how she was indicted.
Prosecutors have Kelly rearrested and charged with manslaughter.
Manslaughter means that Kelly intended to cause serious physical injury, and in the commission of causing serious physical injury, she caused the death of Michael Forbes.
7 months later, on June 2nd, 2008, the trial begins.
The prosecutor claimed that Kelly had grown so frustrated with the marriage that she wanted to kill her husband as a way out of the marriage.
No one in her family talked about Kelly ever mentioning being abused by Michael Forbes. But what they did say that Kelly discussed with them on a constant basis was her dislike for Michael. Her dislike for his health, her dislike for what he looked like, her dislike for his age. Everything disgusted Kelly about Michael Forbes, the man she married, the husband that she vowed to love, honor, and cherish till death do them part.
The case presented against Kelly is much the same as her grand jury hearing, but this time, prosecutors have a secret weapon.
The most damaging part of the trial for Kelly, for us as the defense team, was the testimony of Kelly's alleged paramour. He came to the stand and testified that he had been seeing Kelly throughout the marriage in an intimate way, and that after Kelly killed Michael, she called and texted him. The jury was shocked to hear this.
He would state that he would see her often and there would never be any signs of abuse, no marks, and she never mentioned anything like that at all to him ever.
Kelly's attorney, however, argues that the evidence supports her claim of self-defense.
We argued to the jury that it's not plausible to believe that a mother would wake up one night and decide that she's going to strangle her husband with her daughter 2 doors down. It just didn't make sense. And we can't find any evidence that Kelly intended to do that before it happened. What we did have evidence of was that Kelly had been assaulted that night. We did find bruising all along Kelly's body. And we found a story that Kelly told the police officers consistently, that he strangled Kelly first. Michael strangled Kelly first.
They also claim Michael's history of violence began long before he married Kelly.
What we learned in our investigation as Kelly's attorneys is that Michael had been convicted of some really violent crimes. When he was a younger man in Brooklyn, Michael was a high-level drug dealer who at times resorted to violence to make money.
Michael had actually spent time in prison for rape, for attempted murder, violent charges. that actually proved that Kelly could be telling the truth.
The trial of 29-year-old Kelly Forbes has been going on for several days. The jury has heard compelling evidence that she killed her wealthy husband, Michael Forbes, to escape the marriage and keep his money. But now the defense has turned the tables by putting the victim on trial.
The reason it was important for the jury to know that Michael was a bad guy before he turned his life around, because we wanted to show that Kelly reasonably feared for her life when Michael was strangling her. And we also wanted to show the jury that this was not a random incident or an isolated incident of Michael being violent. In fact, Michael had a history of resorting to violence when he didn't get his way. When we told the jury about Michael's record, everyone was shocked. The judge, the prosecutor, everyone was shocked.
It's very likely that Michael did change from his past prior history with the amount of time that he's been in prison. At the same time, it's easy for some to never really let go of the fact of his past. This is who you are.
Kelly's attorneys believe it was her alleged affair with Jeremy that caused Michael to snap.
It could have been reasonable to think that Michael somehow found out about him and decided that his new, beautiful young bride with whom he's sharing his life was someone who he had to put in check. And we know the way that Michael puts people in check is through violence.
The defense paints Kelly as a young woman who was swept off her feet by an older man, only to discover his true nature after it was too late. The question is whether the jury will agree.
I was just thinking in my head, if you knew they had problems, why wouldn't you leave? You had a boyfriend, so you had access to leave. You had resources, you had brothers, you had siblings, like they could have helped move you out. You were able to live a whole nother life. You say my dad was abusive, but how abusive was he that you weren't scared to have a whole side life?
If she didn't love him anymore, just leave and don't come back. Yeah, but she figured if I kill him, everything will be mine.
On June 16, 2008, after less than 4 hours of deliberation, the jury delivers their verdict.
And the jury came back with a verdict of guilty. When the verdict of guilt was read, Kelly screamed in the courtroom. And the reporters at the time remarked at the nature of her scream and how painful it sounded and how it affected everyone in the courtroom. This was the scream of a mom who was realizing that she would be in prison and that her daughter would grow up without her.
Kelly Forbes is sentenced to 21 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole when she's 50 years old. Her daughter will be 29. But Michael's friends and family will never get to see him again.
Michael was just a great guy. He was a good friend to a lot of his friends. At the trial, you turn around and there were rows of friends there. You know, and if Michael was such a bad guy, who would take time off of work to come to court?
I miss my son. His birthday is about to come up, which he would be 30, and it's hard. And he ain't gonna never walk through the door. It's like living it all over again.
The force of impact caused massive internal hemorrhaging and destroyed his organs from the inside.
Actions taken sometimes end up being a cycle. I do something to you, now you're gonna do something to me.
I believe that she put all the anger from every fight that her son ever had in his life, or every time he got beat up, into one person.
The cost of revenge in this case, I think, is beyond reckoning.
November 8th, 2009. At 4 p.m., police in Elgin, Illinois, received multiple emergency calls from an apartment complex.
Our shift had just started, and the first of a series of 911 calls came in related to a hit and run involving a child. At least initially, that's how it was described.
Callers were frantically seeking help for a teenage boy who had been struck by a vehicle in the parking lot. Dispatchers can hear the chaos and commotion going on, and they immediately send emergency vehicles to the scene.
When they arrive, they find a young man lying on the ground, covered in blood.
There was at least 10 people, if not more, around the victim, screaming, yelling, trying to talk to the officers. And as the officers got there, they had to try to make sense of what happened, who did this, and get as much of this information out as fast as possible while also rendering any kind of first aid and help to the victim.
Residents identified the victim as 17-year-old John Keys, who lives in the building with his mother.
Paramedics realized that Keys' injuries are extremely severe, and he is rushed to Sherman Hospital.
Massive amount of damages to the inside of his body, to his organs, to his spine, to his pelvis area.
The severity of the impact becomes immediately clear. There's tire marks that are leading toward the point of impact. There's pieces of the car, there's headlight assemblies, bumper parts laying everywhere, and a large electrical box had been moved 5 inches off of its mooring.
Considering that the damage that was done on the building and the serious injuries suffered by the victim, you're talking a car maybe going 20, 30 miles an hour.
It's pretty obvious that Keys was struck with a tremendous amount of force.
John W. Keys III, known as Little John, was born in Chicago, Illinois on July 8, 1992. The youngest of 5 children raised by Dion Harris and John Keys Jr.
I was overwhelmed, joy, real excited, because he was my first boy, and I wanted a boy for many, many years.
We wound up with 4 girls, but at that point, we were both saying, hey, this is enough, okay? I love my kids, but we had to slow down. But when I got Lil John, it was just everything to me.
From the beginning, Little John was outgoing and eager to keep up with his older siblings.
My very first memory of us is when we were younger. I was about 5 or 6. John was probably 10, 11 months at the time, and we were playing hide and go seek, and I tried to hide from the seeker, and I jumped on John, and I broke his leg. So he was crawling around with the cast on his first birthday.
He used to drag that leg and go everywhere he needed to go, stairs and all. It did not stop him. Always running, always smiling. That's just how he was. He was my boy. I just let him have his way. Whatever he wanted to do, whatever he wanted to go, he always got to do that.
I'm gonna say that he was spoiled. He got more. So he had his own room and his own space and his own toys.
Little John's parents had been high school sweethearts, but after 16 years together, they'd begun to grow apart.
We was happy for a long time, but John's was out in the street a lot, so I wasn't happy with that.
I was a lot better father than I was husband, unfortunately. Between the womanizing and the running the street and stuff like that, she just pretty much got tired of it.
They eventually separated, and Dion took the children to live in nearby Elgin, Illinois. She officially filed for divorce in 2000.
I think Lil John was around 8 or 9 when she and I split up. Kind of hit him hard.
I felt like he was a little bit more hurt because he was the only boy and my dad was the only other man in the house. So when he left, he was like, I'm the man of the house. He didn't want to be like our little brother anymore. He just wants to be himself.
For Little John, being himself meant following in his father's footsteps.
He was always with me every other weekend. We had our classes here and there, but that was my best friend in the world. Me and Lil John was 2 peas in a pod.
When he started getting like to 7th grade, he started getting interested in young ladies. But I used to tell him that comes with a job. You're not old enough right now. I told him how you have a girlfriend and you can't buy nothing or do anything for. And he like, well, I'm gonna get a job and I'm gonna help you around the house. You can pay me to get something, to get a gift.
He was a hustler. He knew how to get money. He would rake lawns and shovel snow and things like that. He's a hustler, he's getting money, and he's doing it the right way.
By the time he was 17, Little John had more girlfriends than he knew what to do with.
A lot of girls liked him, you know, because he was a handsome dude.
He transformed himself into this guy that had money, and he had the persona, he had the clothes, the look, and so he said, no, I'm not Little John, I'm King Cash. I believe that the attention that my brother started to receive at such a young age definitely blew up his ego to the point where he's like, oh, well, all these girls like me? Well, I'm gonna make sure my hair's always cut and my clothes are always clean, shoes are always clean, and I'm gonna look good, and I'll get even more women.
But for Little John, more women meant trouble.
With the girls that like him, it's always a jealous boyfriend or a jealous ex, and he wasn't the type to back down. Even if he just had met the girl, he'd be like, well, she over here with me now.
Sometimes the other guys made it physical.
He would just beat him up, and he got suspended for it. I was like, well, he know how to fight. That's one thing his dad taught him, how to fight.
He was just like me. He didn't go around, he didn't start fights, but he didn't back down an inch. You know, if you brought it to him, he's gonna meet the challenge.
The constant fighting eventually got him expelled.
After you get into a certain amount of trouble at the regular schools, they'll send you to an alternative school. I mean, so they sent my brother to Central because of the behavioral. They try to say he had behavioral issues. He only went maybe 2 weeks, and they called me from there. The principal was like, he don't need to be here. Do I have the money to take him to get the GED? Because he's too advanced to be here. He don't need what we teaching.
In late October 2009, Little John began making plans to move to Indianapolis to be with his father and get his GED.
He called me and told me, Dad, I'm ready to come back down here. And we sat there on the phone and we made a plan about what was going to be done when he got back down there. You know, you continue to get your GED. I'm going to help you find a job, and you're going to, you know, things going to get better. He knew I was going to be his support group.
He definitely had dreams of going to college and getting some form of business degree, and he wanted to be a businessman.
Just 2 weeks later, those plans would be shattered. Now, Little John is clinging to life after being struck by a car, and police want to know why.
The witnesses are in shock, and the police officers have to try to gather more information so that we can find out who did this.
The callers didn't really know if this was intentional or accidental at the time. There's an immense pressure on them to find a person who did it.
As EMTs rush 17-year-old hit-and-run victim Little John Keys to the hospital, police in Elgin, Illinois begin piecing together what happened.
When they examined the impact scene, there was blood on the outside wall to include paint transfer from the vehicle at the point of impact. They also found tire tracks in the direction of the impact to show from the direction that the person was driving towards the victim.
One of the witnesses is a 17-year-old girl who tells investigators she watched the tragedy unfold from her apartment.
It was unseasonably warm, and the window was open at the time. The girl saw John Keys, also known as Little John, down in the parking lot.
She said that she had called out to him, he didn't hear her, but she continued to look out the window, and at that time she had observed a blue vehicle entering the area, and the vehicle proceeds right at Little John.
The blue car proceeds to jump a curb, hits Keys from behind, and sends him flying face and chest first into this electrical box and into the side of the apartment building.
And according to the witness, it quickly became clear it wasn't an accident.
The girl says the blue car backs up, and as Keys crumples to the ground, another green vehicle pulls up. She sees a woman get out of the blue car, but instead of going to check on Keys to make sure he's okay, she says, "Y'all mess him up," or something to that effect. At this point, men get out of the green vehicle, one of them carrying a baseball bat. The girl says one of the men went up to Keys, struck him on the head, and said, "Talk trash now."
The witness says when it was over, the assailants fled. At that point, she called 911.
A lot of times when someone witnesses a traumatic event, it's such thing that really shakes them. They can recall some details, but when you think about how this emotionally impacted the 17-year-old, I mean, here she is, she sees a friend of hers who is, at this point, she believes, severely injured.
Word of the tragic assault travels fast.
Lil John's girlfriend called me. She called and said, Lil John been hit by a car. And I'm like, what? And I was like, okay, I'm on my way. I beat them to Sherman Hospital. When I got there, they was pulling Lil John out of the ambulance.
Within moments, her worst fears are confirmed.
I knew there wasn't no life in him. My mind went blank. I couldn't think. I only thought of one phone number. My friend Darlene, I called her phone and told her, Lil John gone. And she said, gone where? I said, he's gone. He passed away.
I was literally in traffic when I got the call that my brother was murdered, and I could not move. I physically was stuck in Chicago traffic, and there was nothing that I could do but scream, scream, yell, cry. And my aunt's right there, and I could tell she was trying to be like strong, but she was crying too.
Little John's family gathers at the hospital.
Seeing my brother laid there with just one drop of blood, he still had a smile on his face, so I don't know if he was running and laughing at the same time, but I could never get his face out of my head. Me and his girlfriend went in there and we both gave him a kiss on the forehead. And that was that.
Authorities are now investigating a homicide, and Little John's friends think they know one of the people responsible.
Detectives continued their neighborhood canvass, and they were able to determine that LaCorbic Binion did, in fact, hit John Keys with the baseball bat. Another witness recognizes the young man with the baseball bat.
Just a few hours after Little John Keys was run over and beaten to death, a witness thinks she can identify one of the suspects involved. 16-year-old LaCorbic Binion.
LaCorbic Binion is another student at Larkin. We went to school together. Prior to everything that happened with my brother, he was okay. He was cool. We would speak in the hallways. He wasn't as outgoing as my brother, who would go talk to anybody and try to get any girl. I do not believe that they knew each other. Never hung out, didn't run in the same crowd.
According to the witness, Little John and LaCorbic crossed paths at the same party the night before. It didn't go well.
The story that I got from my brother, Lil John's girlfriend, was that my brother was dancing with a girl, and the girl was LaCorbic's girlfriend. And LaCorbic did not like that, and so he pushed my brother. My brother reacted and hit him in the face.
When my son called his balance, he walked up to him and hit him across the eye, and his eye started bleeding. And he was like, "Your girl asked to dance with me, what you pushing me for?" But when my son seen the blood, they said he took off running because there was so much blood, it scared him.
He wasn't trying to beat him or hurt him too bad. He pushed him, he hit him once, and that was that.
When investigators speak to Little John's family, they confirm the story. They say at the time, it didn't seem like anything to be concerned about.
11 or 12 at night, he was like, "Sis, they kicked me out the party." And I was like, "For what?" And he was like, "Cause I was dancing with this dude's girlfriend and he pushed me, so I hit him." And I was like, "You okay?" And he was just like, "Yeah, I'm good." He didn't seem like, "Oh, I just got into a world of mess" or anything like that. It was just basically a altercation between two teenage boys.
I just heard that he was at the party and the girl was dancing on him. The next day, he's dead.
If LaCorbic was the one with the bat, police need to find him, the others in the green car with him, and the driver of the blue car that hit Little John. Soon, Sergeant Trost's keen eye gives them their next good lead.
I was sitting at the Price Right liquor store gas station, and as I'm sitting there watching traffic going westbound, I heard this thump, 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 which sounded to me like a flat tire, and I see this older vehicle pulls right into the gas station.
The car is a blue 1991 Chrysler Imperial, and the damage to its front end immediately makes Sergeant Trost suspicious.
And I observed 3 people standing at the driver's side door of this vehicle. An older female, a younger female, and then a male juvenile. All 3 of them, I knew right away they had been through some sort of trauma at that point. I just didn't know exactly what it was. Now they start walking away. Instead of going into the gas station or even approaching me if they had a problem, they start walking away from me. And I exit my vehicle and I get out and I say that, hey, we just had a report of an accident up the street and I'd like to, talk to you. The other younger woman, probably about 19 or so, appeared to have some kind of injuries, some facial injuries. So I requested an ambulance.
While they await the paramedics, Trost spots a harrowing detail on the car.
It appeared to have some kind of damage to it, and there was no way you could not mistake the amount of blood that was on that vehicle.
And suddenly, a shocking confession.
Tamara Branch, the older female, who was the driver of the vehicle, says, I hit that boy.
According to witnesses, 2 vehicles were involved in the hit-and-run murder of Little John Keys. The blue car that ran him over, and a green car carrying 16-year-old LaCorbic Binion, the boy who allegedly beat him. Police are still looking for LaCorbic. But after a traffic stop, the driver of the blue car has made a spontaneous confession.
With her comment to me, now I know that this changes more from just an initial stop to an actual criminal investigation that, can be quite serious. Because if I were to continue questioning her, I would have to ensure that I Mirandized her. So at this point, I didn't ask any questions of her. And I requested for an additional unit.
Wherever there's a murder investigation in Illinois, you have to have a videotaped interrogation of the murder suspect. It has to be videotaped. So, they needed to bring her back to the station to get her on tape, basically.
That doesn't stop the suspect from talking, however. She identifies herself as 33-year-old Tamara Branch.
She had overheard the radio content of having a show-up witnesses come see the vehicle, etc. And she made a statement to the effect of, there's no reason for that, and again stated, I hit that boy, and we'll let the judge sort it out.
Detectives looked into her background and history, and they didn't find that much. She was a mother of 3, lived in nearby Streamwood, and worked at a large department store. The only thing she had on her record were minor traffic offenses.
There was no violence in her background. It's what makes the investigation even more difficult, trying to understand why someone's going to do something like this.
Still not in the recorded interrogation, she offers a direct explanation.
She readily admitted that she ran down Little John because her son, LaCorbic Binion, had been bullied by him.
Tamara told police officers that she believed that her son, LaCorbic, had been picked on and bullied at school. I think that she went after John Keys in an effort to pay him back for what he had done to her son LaCorbic the night before. And she was going to teach LaCorbic a lesson and how to stand up for himself.
And she even asked at one point, what would you do?
But as questioning heats up, she delivers a wildly abrupt change to her story.
After police began asking her questions about her front end damage, she claimed that it was from a previous incident. Police also questioned her about whether or not she knew John Keys, which she said she didn't. She also said that she was just in the area meeting somebody and had no idea where the blood came from on her front bumper.
In essence, she denied absolutely everything in the taped interview. She denied the incident between her son and Little John that had occurred the night before also.
Watching the video of her in Elgin police custody, you could look at her and tell that she was making up stories. Oh, my car had already had an accident and, it just stopped right there. So I was just going to walk and leave it and go get somebody to help me come back and get it. She lied continuously, didn't drop a tear, no remorse, no nothing.
She probably realized how serious it was and began to try to minimize her role in the entire situation, just as a defense mechanism. But the physical evidence, the witnesses, everything was there.
Police arrest Tamara and charge her with first-degree murder. But without her confession, they'll need more to prove she did it.
Police at this point are just trying to shore up their evidence. But there's, plenty of other eyewitnesses and physical evidence, that's readily available.
Tamara's son, LaCorbic, is still nowhere to be found. The next day, on November 8th, investigators track down his girlfriend to see what she can tell them. When they get to the girl's house, they're met by her father instead. He assures them she had nothing to do with Little John's death. And the reason he knows is because he was in the green car.
So at this party the night before, where John Keys had struck LaCorbic, LaCorbic's girlfriend was there. LaCorbic's girlfriend's parents got there, and the father ended up taking LaCorbic to the hospital.
On the way to the hospital, he overheard a conversation between LaCorbic and Tamara.
Tamara expressed frustration and anger. She stated that her son had been subject to continued bullying, and she felt that the time was now that he needed to stand up for himself against this.
Tamara told LaCorbic, I'm sick of you being a little B-word, and I'm going to teach you how to go in on somebody.
The investigation into the murder of little John Keys is only a few hours old, and police already have a suspect in custody, 33-year-old Tamara Branch. Now they're getting a clearer picture of what happened from one of the men who were there.
The father of Tamara's son's girlfriend stated Tamara was emotional, was upset, related to the fact that her son was being bullied and that this incident had occurred the night before where her son got injured by Little John.
So Sunday, she woke her son up to come and fight my child. She told her son, you ain't gonna be no punk. You gonna fight him today. You ain't gonna keep letting people bully you. The son didn't want to fight, but she forced him.
The father says he agreed to take LaCorbic to confront little John. 2 other boys came with them.
He stated Tamara found information about where little John was, and that he agreed to go along to keep things from, in his words, from getting out of hand.
The man says he followed Tamara to little John's apartment building, but when they got there, she decided to take matters into her own hands.
I don't think that Tamara probably planned to hit him with the car, to crush him with the car, until she saw him in that instant, decided that she was going to use her car as a weapon against John.
She had it in her head that her son was no longer going to take this, and she was going to be the person to show him, this is how you get revenge.
This is how she went to get payback for a teenage fist fight. This is how you respond.
But Tamara still wasn't satisfied. With little John unconscious and bleeding on the ground, she ordered her son to finish the job.
Tamara's son exits the vehicle with the baseball bat, and at the direction of Tamara, proceeds to strike little John, who is clearly severely injured, with the baseball bat several times.
To hear that he got out afterwards to try to hit my brother's body at that point, I was furious. Because I knew this kid, and it's like, you don't have the balls yourself, and you thought that that was the moment that you needed to get back at him when he was already hit by a car and possibly dead.
After the incident, they immediately re-entered their vehicles and exited from the scene as fast as they could.
An autopsy confirms investigators' suspicions. Little John could not have survived his injuries from the crash, no matter what happened afterwards.
The Kane County coroner did their investigation related to this, and the findings included the fact that it's severe damage to his pelvic area, broken bones, and a severed major artery, which caused massive bleeding, which all proved to be fatal.
Regardless of what LaCorbic had done with the baseball bat at the scene, John Keys was, for all intents and purposes, dead at the scene. He was not going to make it. So there was absolutely nothing that LaCorbic did that would have changed, that would have made it worse.
Investigators are also able to obtain surveillance footage that shows the two vehicles leaving the scene.
Tamara got back in her car, backed it up, drove out of the parking lot, and drove down the street about a block to this gas station convenience store, all the while leaving a trail of automobile fluid, oil, antifreeze, that sort of thing along the road. You can see the damage to the front of the car. You can see the damage to the tire and wheel well.
Armed with this new witness statement and the evidence collected at the crime scene, prosecutors believe they have a strong enough case to go to trial.
Given the information that's available, it's very reasonable to conclude that Tamara had sought out where little John was, created a plan on how to deal with him, and set it into motion, which is, a cold and calculating conspiracy that she created here to go after this young boy.
4 months later, on March 23, 2010, a grand jury decides to indict LeCorbic Binion for first-degree murder.
LeCorbic had gone with some family members down to Arkansas and was no longer in the Elgin area by the time we got around to charging him.
He's arrested without incident in Arkansas and taken back to Illinois to face trial.
There were witnesses who said that he got out of the car and he had a bat. There were witnesses who said he then took a couple of swings at Jonathan. You can't just be out doing vigilanteism. Should LeCorbic have been struck the night before? No. But there's ways that needs to be handled by the police, by the judicial system. You don't do payback on your own.
Authorities in Elgin, Illinois, have charged 2 people for the murder of little John Keys, 16-year-old LeCorbic Binion and his mother, Tamara Branch. Witnesses say it was a coordinated act of revenge for a fist fight between the 2 boys.
They said that the boy pushed him, and that's why he punched him. They like, yeah, LeCorbic had to go to the hospital, so that's why his mom came and ran him over. And I'm like confused, like, okay, your son got into a fight and you come and run down a kid? Are you okay? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around that.
In August 2011, Tamara's trial finally begins.
In Illinois, you don't even need an intent to kill. If you just have an intent to cause them great bodily harm and what you do to them causes the death, you can be guilty of first-degree murder.
The witnesses in the other car with LeCorbic aren't charged with anything, but one of the passengers testifies to Tamara's state of mind.
He had overheard how Tamara was explaining how upset she was and how she was, in essence, fed up with the bullying that her son was receiving. She put together a group to go after this person. And ultimately what happened is she committed murder.
Tamara pleads not guilty and, in a surprising move, forgoes her right to a jury. Instead, she opts to leave her fate in the hands of the judge.
I think the defense strategy was pretty clear. They opted for a bench trial before Judge Alan Anderson in King County, and their main thrust was arguing that Branch was, she was guilty. Not of first-degree murder, but of second-degree murder.
She kept on the stand crying and saying like she just wanted people to stop messing with her son, but my brother didn't go to your school with your son. My brother didn't know your son. So the fact that you're trying to play like, oh, I just wanted to protect him, like, get that out of here. Like, no, you were upset because he got beat up and then you did what you wanted to do.
But prosecutors aren't buying her story.
It was clear to me that while she knew what she had done was wrong, that she did not want to accept legal responsibility for the acts that she had perpetrated upon John Keys by killing him in such a brutal and heinous way. Second-degree murder is when you commit first-degree murder, but you do it under a sudden and intense passion. Her son having been punched is not a serious provocation under Illinois law.
I believe that she put all the anger from every fight that her son ever had in his life, or every time he got beat up, into one person. And that just unfortunately happened to be my brother.
On November 9th, 2011, the judge finds Tamara guilty and sentences her to 34 years in prison.
I do not feel like that's justifiable. My brother could never come back. You know, he's gone for having a fight with your son. So that's nothing. I feel like you get more time for selling dope than murder. And that's just the way this world is.
30 years? Come on now, not enough time. I believe they should have been 50 plus, minimum 50.
The following year, in May of 2012, Tamara's son LeCorbic decides not to go to trial. Instead, he pleads guilty to a reduced charge.
The plea offer that we offered to LeCorbic, we offered to amend the charge to a conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, which is a lower charge, obviously, than first-degree murder.
As I get older, I had to put myself in his shoes as a 16-year-old kid, and your mom is telling you, go up, go do it. I don't think I would have had the strength to deny my mom or tell her no. If that was what was happening at the time, I believe I would have did what my mom told me to do.
We also took into account the motive and who was the one who had instigated this crime, and that was definitely LeCorbic's mother, Tamara. And we also took into account LeCorbic's young age. So he was not the one that was the principal. He was kind of being pushed into this and really kind of being bullied into it by his mother at that point in time. We offered him to be sentenced to 15 years in prison. He was required to serve 7.5 years of that.
LeCorbic Binion was released after serving his sentence.
I was strolling through Facebook one day, and the people you may know, his picture, it just, the way it felt in my stomach, it just, like, I hurried up and blocked this so I could never see that again. Like, it just did something else to me that I didn't even know was there.
Tamara Branch is serving out her sentence at the Logan Correctional Center in Lincoln, Illinois. She is eligible for parole in 2043 at the age of 71.
As a parent myself, it hurts to see your child or your children suffer, and you want to protect them in any way you can, but cooler heads need to prevail, and violence does not solve anything, ever.
There's a man upstairs called God that I lean on him every day. And I just ask for strength to get me through it, but I hurt every day. I miss my son. His birthday is about to come up, which he would be 30. And it's hard.
Everybody loved Lil Jon, and it just really, really put a blackness in my heart that I have to deal with for the rest of my life. I think it's one of the stupidest things out here that a person can do, to go out there and seek revenge, because, for number one, I'm a God-fearing man. The Lord says, vengeance is mine. And number two, in my case, I got 4 daughters just to watch over. You know, they don't have a brother no more.
The whole cycle is unfortunate because nobody really wins. Everybody winds up dead or hurt. And so I've learned to really stop and think before I act. Really, I mean, really stop and think.
Violence don't prove anything. Is this something you really want to do? What's gonna come behind it? Who's gonna be hurt behind it? What you lose? I mean, she hurt, she in jail, she can't see her kids. I'm hurt, I can't see my son no more. I got to go to the graveyard to